Welcome everyone to the first ever Storytime with Juan Ruben. I'm DJ Slim Shaky, and the guy over there is Juan Ruben. Welcome officially to VGRN, Juan. Good to have you.
It's good to be here, actually. Very cool. And I see my buddy Art just popped in, my train man. Welcome, everybody.
He's our resident train expert.
Yeah, he's a train savant. I mean, my God. Because I know a little something about trains. I mean, I grew up a train fan and almost killed my father with a Christmas train set. We can talk about that later. But very interesting story. And Art really impresses me with his knowledge of all things railroad related. Very, very cool.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
So anyway, Juan, because obviously this is your first time ever on BGRN, so I just kind of want to familiarize, the viewers, my viewers, with you. Obviously, you're from Studio B. That's where you cast. What is it? 3 times a week usually?
2 times a week, but once a month on a Saturday. So there's once a month. There's 3 times, but normally
Monday and what else? Feel free to plug it.
Mondays and Thursdays, although I took yesterday off to watch the fireworks show at SeaWorld because I can. But, Mondays from, you guys do Eastern time. We do Central time. It's 8 to 11 Eastern time on Mondays. And then on Thursdays, I go from, what would it be? 7 to 9 Eastern time.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and that's how I actually met Juan, everyone. And that's the inspiration from this show. Just for those wondering, I was listening to Juan one day back. I guess it was a month ago now, because we've been kind of planning this for a couple weeks now. It was just I was watching a show, and I remember I think it was a solid 45 minutes. It was supposed to be a music show, but he was telling like the most entertaining story about stuff that was happened before I was born. And just the way he told it was still interesting to me. I had no clue what he was talking about, but just the way he told it was entertaining. And I was like, we got to get that guy a show. Put him on. Did you ever think you would get a show where you could just ramble on about literally anything, Juan?
Hey, Sonny, actually, it always occurred to me that I might want to, before I go to the next level, share all my wisdom and wit with you youngsters before I, moved on and before they put me in the pens and packed me away. I thought maybe it would be a good idea. So I'm liking this, Sonny.
Come on. You said before you were born, you gave me the perfect setup. I mean, there it was. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll show you. Well, yeah, I've been around. Yeah.
All right, yeah, because I don't even know how old you are, Juan, but I do. All I really know about you is that you DJ on Studio B and that you're from San Diego, California.
Well, you're right about one of those things. I DJ on Studio B. I am not from San Diego, however. I live in San Diego. I am a diehard, dyed-in-the-wool, born and raised, spent the first 5 decades of my life, Chicagoan. I am from Chicago. And every now and then somebody will ask me, now granted, I've been in San Diego for 13 years now. It was 13 years on Valentine's Day. And I have been here all that time. Not always in the city. I spent about the first 9 to 10 years, I'm a little vague on the exact time I moved down here, to the city. I was in the North San Diego County. And if anybody out there knows the area, I was living first in Oceanside and then the town to the east of that, Vista, for most of that time. I was on Oceanside for the first almost 2 years and then spent time in Vista, which is right next door. Anyway, the point is this. People would ask me sometimes, so do you miss Chicago? And I would always tell them every single day. In spite of all the advantages, the year-round perfect weather, almost perfect, because there's actually a downside to that, in that imagine living somewhere where for 12 months you barely get any rain at all. I mean, it's not green out here. It's very rarely green out here, unless we get some unusual, real, genuine thunderstorms. So And I'm used to 4 seasons, and out here there are only 1.5 or 2 at best. It's like summer and not so summer. So you don't see snow, and I miss snow. I grew up with white Christmases and all that, and but there are things about Chicago that I just miss, and will always miss them. But there's a lot to like out here too. And don't get me wrong; it's not like I hate being out here, because I actually love it quite a bit. But I still miss Chicago.
I got you. Yeah, and I will say it's the exact opposite where we are. We are, I'm in New Jersey, so the other side of the country, quite literally, and we get all 4 seasons, a spring, a summer, a fall, a winter, and, there are people who live here that hate that. They'd rather it just be hot all year or rather it just be cool all year. Me personally, I don't know, and maybe you can attest to this since, you only get 2 seasons. I feel like it would get boring having one season basically all the time. Like, I feel like being hot 24/7, 365 days a year probably gets very old. At least, we get a little bit of the winter, a little bit of the summer, and, a genuine fall and winter. Fall and spring, I should say.
That is extremely perceptive on your part, young man, because, yes, I get bored. I have to, it's like, sometimes I'll forget what day of the week it is because, unless there's some kind of freak something like an actual shower that makes a difference or something, it's like every day is almost the same. And now there are seasonal weather patterns. I mean, there are some slight differences. Like, for instance, in what you would consider winter, out here, it doesn't last very long. And temperatures generally the high temperatures can be in the 50s, and the lows can sometimes approach freezing in some areas. But those areas are inland. On the coast, it generally stays pretty mild. But yeah, it gets dull. It gets boring. It bores me. I miss like walking down a Chicago street in January where you got this wind coming off the lakefront. And if you're not wearing earmuffs, your ears get that little tingling sensation just before frostbite sets in. I miss that. I'm a sick puppy that way. I just miss that feeling. I always found that invigorating. It made me feel alive. Whereas out here, it's like, it's Thursday. It's 60 degrees and sunny. Okay, just like it was on Wednesday. And I bet tomorrow it's going to be 60 degrees and sunny. Oh, no, it's going to be 59 with chance of rain. Oh, wow, I got something to look forward to.
Chance of forest fire, 80%.
See, there's that. That's what keeps you on your toes. Because when it gets dry enough and, the winds start to blow, the Santa Ana winds come through, it's like, then you got the risk of brush fires, which can be pretty nasty, as you know, out here.
We actually have had our worst forest fire season here in New Jersey in quite a number of years. I think we have had 3 now. There was the first one, which was like the most riskiest to people because it happened like in a small wooded area right behind a major shopping area and right by a major highway. Yeah. Like we're talking like hundreds of cars a day, like lifeblood of the town type of highway. So they had to shut everything down. They even had to shut down part of the interstate. It caused traffic backups all day. Wow. Like they literally diverted all the traffic onto side streets that weren't designed for that much traffic. So I imagine people living there was probably not very happy with the high traffic volume.
I'm sure because like out here, if those kinds of things happen, you have a lot of longtime residents who are used to that, the inconveniences and stuff. And what you're mostly concerned about if you live out here is that you're in the path of one of those fires. But otherwise, you just kind of accept the fact that, okay, I might be delayed if I have to go this way because they've got the roads closed. So you adjust to those kinds of things. And then there's the other, like every once in a blue moon, it's been a while since I felt one, you got earthquakes out here. And nothing major has happened since I've been out here, but there have been some pretty nasty ones. Like before I moved out here, up in the LA area, there have been a couple. There was one when I first came out here in 2000, I think it was around 2010, where I was outside of a shopping mall. And the ground started moving underneath me. And that was a little unsettling. But I noticed that people were just kind of calmly coming out of the stores, like relaxed, like, hey, it's Wednesday. It's an earthquake. Big deal. And, it's kind of taking everything in stride. And I thought, okay, yeah, so you guys are used to this. This is a little strange to me. It's like the ground has turned to jelly underneath my feet. What's going on?
We don't get them here either. We had I forget what year it was. I think it was like 2011 or something like that. There was one that was like a big one out in like the middle of the country. I forget where it was. I think it may have been Illinois or something, but I don't remember.
Quite possible,
anyway, long story short, it was a big earthquake, and because it was so big, it actually was able to be felt all the way here in New Jersey. And I'm talking about a little bit of vibration under your feet. I'm talking about like it was enough to sway literal buildings. And for us, we'd never get earthquakes here. Like we don't even get, if we get a tiny little tremor, it's like a hurricane to us. We're like, duck. You guys feel a tremor. You don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But I remember everybody here was like, if you lived on a second floor apartment, it was like you could feel it for real. But like me, it was kind of strange because I actually didn't feel it when it happened. Because when it happened, because it was only for a few seconds, really, we got it. I was on the grass, like I forget what it was. I think it may have been cutting grass or trimming something. But friend of mine was standing on like a concrete like back porch basically, and they were like, "Did you feel that?" I was like, "Feel what?" Like, I think we just had an earthquake. I was like, "Well, I didn't feel nothing," So I guess the grass was enough to soften it. But.
Apparently so. Yeah. The first earthquake I ever felt actually was not here in California. It was in Chicago. And when you mention the fact that the earthquake might have been based in Illinois, that's not surprising. There is a fault. It's called the New Madras Fault that runs, I believe, I think it's centered in like somewhere in Arkansas or Missouri, somewhere like that. And it every now and then will act up and shake things up. And one morning at about 4 a.m., I was awakened by, my bed's just kind of like shifting and swirling. And to the best of my knowledge, I had not put a water bed before I went to bed that night. But it was the same kind of sensation. And the walls were pulsing in my little apartment. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is an earthquake. And it was quite the wake up call. And it seemed like, of course, these things never last as long as you think they are, because everything kind of slows down as it's happening in situations like that. So I just kind of wrote it out and thought, okay, earthquake. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call my mother out in California and say, hey, Mom, guess what? I had one too. Because she was living out here. She moved out here. Of course, she's no longer with us, but she moved out here back in '92 after she retired and lived with my sister for a few years until they just got, two strong-willed women just said, okay, enough. You got to find your own place, Mom. And so she moved into a senior apartment complex for a while. And then, of course, her health deteriorated and so that, and on and on. So, yeah, it's the earthquake was Chicago the first time Chicago. And, since then, like I said, the one that was, when I was in the shopping mall, it was in Carlsbad, which is just south of Oceanside, and a couple of little minor shake 'em ups. When I think one of them was here, maybe, I don't know, earlier this year or last year sometime. But pretty much fairly quiet on that front out here. But it can happen. And you're always aware of the fact that it can happen.
Yeah, I know they earthquake-proof everything out there. But while we're also on the subject here of, you in Chicago and then you in San Diego, what kind of made you move to San Diego? Was it just like a change of scenery, like a career or something?
Poverty. In a word, it was poverty. I had been, unfortunately, I was not working for a long time in Chicago, and I was forced to give up my apartment, and I had family out here, and I also had family on the East Coast, and I was thinking that maybe I would move east and stay with my sister who lives in New Rochelle, New York for a while. But I made a brief side trip to a small town in Ohio, because someone said, well, why don't you stay here until you get back on your feet and everything? And you can always look for work in Cleveland, because I had gone to college in that area. So I tried that out for about a month, but things went really, really weird there. And I realized, I got to get out of here. And so I called both I had some help with calling my mother she was in Oceanside, and then my oldest sister, who was in New Rochelle. And so we talked back and forth, and my mother asked, she said, well, why don't you come out here first before you go to New York? And so I went west instead of east, and here I am. I've been here the whole time, and there's a part of me that regrets not going east, because I think opportunities would have been better for me if I had done that. Plus, my sister and brother-in-law have some connections that I really could have taken advantage of. But my mother really she was at a point in her life where she kind of needed, somebody to be there, even though she would never admit it. She was just not that kind of person. And so I decided to stay. And I'm glad I did, because at the beginning, she and my sister had been at odds with one another and really hadn't spoken to one another for a while. I know this is getting serious, but I'll share. And so when my mother's health started to deteriorate, I hadn't even talked to my sister. So, because it was that contentious between the two of them. So it's like, well, you're on mom's side, not mine, whatever. We have a weird family, and maybe one of these days I'll get in all this stuff. But anyway, when my mother started, she was preparing to take a trip east to visit my sister in New York, because my sister had bought her a round-trip plane ticket for her birthday. And so Mom was going to spend time with her. And while she was preparing for the trip, she fell and apparently hit her head. And she didn't want to tell me about it. But I came over and because I hadn't heard from her, because I was going to take her to the airport, so I hadn't heard from her. And so she told me, when I went to her apartment, she told me what had happened, and I could tell that she wasn't quite herself. And she was not going to go to see a doctor, and I kind of arm twisted her into doing that. And that was the beginning of, unfortunately, her downward spiral. I mean, a lot of sad times, but the cool thing about it, if you can call, if there is a... You don't mind
me asking, how old was she?
She died. She was, let's see, she would have been 88 years old.
Oh, so she had a nice long life.
She had a long life. It wasn't always nice. She was a fighter. She was a tough lady. She had to be. She raised 6 ungrateful kids by herself, because my parents were divorced when I was 7 years old. She worked 3 jobs. And there were times when the only time I would see her is if she was taking a nap between the 3 jobs, or if she wanted to borrow my car to drive to one of those jobs. She worked her butt off.
So what you're saying is you didn't come from like a rich background. You weren't, your father wasn't Bill Gates or anything, right?
No, he was not Bill Gates. He was probably aspiring to be John Dillinger, but we won't go into that. He was a character. I like I said, they divorced when I was 7, but I do have early memories of him. In fact, one of the things I alluded to, the Christmas tree thing where I almost killed him. There's one Christmas where I got a train set from Santa Claus, okay? And so me and my brother Louis, we set it up under the tree. Now, this was after my parents had divorced, but my father came to visit us. And so he was sleeping on the couch in the living room where the Christmas tree was. And so Louis and I put the train set together, did not realize how close it was to the tree, okay? And so we got everything going, fired up the train, and tree goes over. My father's on the couch, falls over, right on Dad's head. He never woke up. He slept through the whole damn thing. So we scrambled to get the tree uprighted again. And other than the tinsel that remained in his hair after we got the tree up, he didn't have a clue that anything had happened. He liked to drink, okay? Clearly.
He got a concussion.
Yeah. So, yeah, he just he had no idea that it had happened. So, anyway, Mom worked her ass off. And she also did not conform to any of the pathetic sexist stereotypes that men have about women. She was a role model. She could have been a role model for women. She was certainly a role model for me. And she was one badass lady. Okay, I'm here to tell you. When she was a kid, she played shortstop on a boys' baseball team, not a softball team, baseball team. I was a horrible baseball player. I clearly did not get her genes. And my father was Puerto Rican, so I should have had the double whammy, mom's experience and my dad's Latin genes. But no, I was a horrible baseball player because of my astigmatism. You know, I couldn't hit a curveball to save my life. And fielding wasn't my thing either. I was a bad hit, bad field guy. Stay away from baseball. So,
I was the opposite. I used to play Little League, and I was one of those, offensively, I could hit a ground ball as well as the next guy, but, I was not hitting any home runs. I don't think I've ever hit a home run in my life, to be honest with you. So, I was pretty good defensively, not so much when I was younger, because when I was young, I would literally throw it as hard as I could in the general direction of where I wanted it to go, and then my coach was always telling me, less power, more accuracy. You're going to throw out your arm before, at like 11 years old. And, and then I had someone else who was kind of not an official coach, but like would work with me after school. But he coached baseball, and he helped me kind of improve my accuracy. He was like more of the same thing, less power. But we really couldn't practice hitting because we were doing this behind where my mom's apartment building was. So, obviously we didn't want to be hitting baseballs with a bat back there because there would probably be a broken window and some very upset tenants, some very upset landlord. Just, we were going to go out to a baseball field, but just never quite happened.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, welcome into everyone in the room because we got quite a bit of people. Just want to do a chat readout real quick. We got Aaron. We got Guest 912. Welcome. Obviously, we got you, Juan. We got Spot. We got Arthur. We got my mom. We got Radio Guy Rick. And we got Robin in here, Mark 7. Welcome in, everybody.
Hold on a second. We got your mom?
Yeah, Debbie and NJ is my mom. Yes,
that's your mom. Well,
yes,
cool, very, very cool. I did not know that until now. Hello, Mom. You raised a good son here. I'm here to tell you.
And also, audience, we're not sure exactly how we're going to do it because, like I said, we are completely winging this. I just want everyone to know that it's not like we scripted this or anything like that. So we were completely winging it, and I think we're doing pretty good so far. And either we're gonna succeed that way or we're going to fail miserably. Either way should be funny, But anyway, we want to get some viewer interaction in here. So, if you guys have a story about something that you would like Juan to tell, maybe a specific, I don't know, anything. And if he has a story about it, he'll talk about it. Or if you have a question for him personally, maybe he'll answer it in a long, winding way. So,
a long and winding way. Yeah, that's about right. I mean, there. I don't want this to turn into one. Hey, Juan, this is your life kind of thing, because I mean, frankly, I don't think of my life as terribly exciting. I mean, but we all have stories to tell because we've all lived life. Obviously, things have happened to us that have impacted us either positively or otherwise, and. I have my share of things, and I guess I can find a way to share those things in a way that I hope is entertaining. But as you know, my as you can tell, my brain works faster than my mouth. So sometimes it sounds like I'm stuttering, but it's like, it's like, but it's like my mouth is just trying to catch up with the brain because the brain's always and the mouth is like, oh man, come on, slow down, brother, come on, man, you give me a break, man. They're just flying, ideas are going left and right, all around, and you won't let me get it all out, man. They're gonna think you like a stuttering dude or something. They're gonna say you need a therapy or something. So just chill, okay? Just chill, slow down, and let the thoughts flow. Find some let them flow into like a nice little tight river, But you want it to be like the damn ocean or something, like the Pacific, all over the place. So just chill. That's not going to happen, okay?
You see, guys, I wasn't kidding. I've been telling my viewers, because like I said, I didn't know how much they like a talk show. I said, you got to listen to Juan tell stories. He has the most entertaining way of telling a story. It could be something you're not even interested in the story itself, but just the way he tells it is spot on. You honestly, have you ever considered doing like an audiobook? Because I feel like you'd be a great audiobook narrator.
What's funny is that I was actually, that's not the first time I've heard that. I worked for 4 years in Oceanside at a thrift store, mostly collecting donations. It was a Goodwill store. And I used to because I never told Rick early on about that. So he would always speculate as to what I was doing out here work-wise. And I got a kick out of some of the ridiculous ideas he came up with. And I think somehow he gathered that I was working for a thrift store, but he always thought it was Salvation Army, which I thought was hilarious. He was like, he would ask me if I wore the uniform, if I was like, ringing the bell over the red kettle at Christmas time, and I just let him go with that fantasy because I figured, what the hell? Because I wasn't always crazy about the job, and I was always afraid that if I did a rant about it, and they, and somebody heard it, that I could face consequences. So I always keep it quiet, And, but anyway, working up there, one day a lady dropped off some donations and I was helping her. And she says to me, just totally out of the blue, she says, "You got a really nice voice. Have you ever considered doing audiobook narration?" That's funny that you say that. And then she said this, and she was not the first person to say that. I've always heard that, I had an interesting voice. I never thought so. I always thought I sounded like Bryant Gumbel on crack. But apparently there must be something going on because people have always said positive things about my voice.
You have one. You have a really good one. I feel like you do have a genuine radio voice, honestly, Juan. Like, I feel like you are one of those you could pull off radio, but also it's your energy. You have a good way, a lot of energy, and you're able to, tell it with such energy and with such, like not just detail, but like almost like you're into the story yourself, which is kind of really great.
That just happens naturally because it goes. I mean, it goes all the way back. I don't know where it comes from or where it started. I just know that as long as I've been here, I've been telling stories in this way with this kind of energy or passion or whatever you want to call it. And sometimes when I'm debating serious topics, I have that same energy and passion. And some folks can misinterpret that. They think I may be getting angry or something. But no, it's just the way I do it. That's all. And I found myself having to apologize to folks for if I like scare them off, because like, no, you don't understand. I'm not angry. Just believe me, trust me. I just have this passion about stuff. And that's why it might come off to some folks that way. So I'm sorry is never far from my vocabulary in situations where I get passionate about stuff.
I gotcha. By the way, I kind of meant to ask you, so are you retired or do you do still work or?
I am retired. I decided to do it early in part because of the pandemic and that work was not forthcoming. And I wasn't sure much longer that was going to be. So I did decide to, take the retirement and, which I kind of have mixed feelings about. But the pandemic kind of pushed me into making that decision because I was going to not do it. I was going to, no, I'll just wait because I'm not quite 65 yet. And I was going to wait until then or 65 or even 67. But things were just such that it's like, you got to make a decision. And then when the pandemic happened, it's like, okay, I better, go and do at least the Social Security thing and whatever. And so, yeah, technically I'm retired. I don't feel that way, though.
So what did you do for work or a career, rather? Because, I don't know, I know some places, if you retire before 65, and obviously you have a long way to go before I have to worry about this.
Oh, yeah.
You take like half of your pension. Like, you know, instead of getting your full salary, you get a half salary. I know it's like that with like police departments. You know, if they retire before they hit 20 years on the force, they only get half the pension instead of the full.
Right. Okay. Well, I didn't do anything like that. I mean, I had a number of interesting jobs wrapped around a 21-year career that I like to think of as 8 years in the sandbox and 12 years in the toy store. I worked for a major retailer that barely exists anymore, but at the time they were the
Sears,
the world's largest retailer. Exactly.
You see, I was able to pick that out very quickly because Sears is like, I don't even know how they're still alive, honestly.
Neither do I. Just hang on, guys, because my pension's there. Come on, hang on. Go on, please. At least let me be able to get that pension when I turn 65. I started out at Sears because of my mother. I made the mistake of leaving college early because I panicked and about something that I thought was happening to me physically, and it turns out that the solution was something fairly simple, but I didn't know that. So I left school, and my mother was angry at me for doing that. So I had to make a decision about what I was going to do next. And so I I was seeing my first true love, dear Monica. I hope she's doing well today. And she was a student at Illinois State University in Normal. And she says, well, you know, I know some people who might be able to help you get set up here if you want to stay here and try to, you know, get back on your feet and go back to school. And I said, well, you know, my goal would be to go back to Oberlin College. But who knows? Maybe I could even consider going there to Illinois State, even though I did not want to go to a large school. I mean, I chose Oberlin specifically because I did not want to go to a big school. Screw that. The funny thing about that is that when I was a senior in high school, I was getting like all of these, you know, letters from colleges all over the place because I guess they got a hold of my ACT and SAT scores, which were pretty decent. And the one school I wanted to go to, they never sent me anything. But there was one particular letter that came from the University of Michigan. And in retrospect, I realized that was the missed opportunity. Because had I gone to Michigan at the time, and because I was, you know, still playing saxophone actively, and I was looking for, you know, a place where I could do music, I probably would have been in Madonna's first band, because she and I would have started as freshmen together in Ann Arbor. But I didn't know that. I didn't even know Madonna existed in the summer of 1976. There, do the math. Now you can figure out how old I am. Yes, I was part of the bicentennial class, and it was kind of a big deal, you know. We had like red, white, and blue tassels on our caps. That's the graduation. Normally the school colors were blue and green, you know, which is like, you know, God, blue and green. Like, what a dull color. Anyway, but anyway, I'm going off track here. But I went to Oberlin College, which is a tiny little liberal arts college 35 miles downwind from Cleveland, and literally it's downwind from Cleveland, because Cleveland back in the 70s was this polluted industrial mess. The Cuyahoga River used to catch fire regularly, and I actually remember going to visit a beach in Cleveland with my mother just when I got to Oberlin. We decided to go into Cleveland and check things out, and we went over to what was supposed to be a beach and was right next to some industrial sludge plant. And the sand was all black because of it. I mean, this was like this oil that had washed up on shore, where it oozed out of this plant that was right next door. They didn't have the foresight that the city of Chicago did early on, and that's like to not have that kind of industrial activity on the lakefront, except for one small section right at the far south end of Chicago. Chicago kept the beaches open for the public because they felt the public should enjoy that. They shouldn't be either bought up by rich folks so that the general public could not have access to the beaches, nor should it be used just for industrial purposes, just only in certain spots. So that's why you can enjoy the Chicago lakefront from north to south, openly without any obstruction. And it's one of the cool things about, if you've never been to Chicago, and I know Chicago's been in the news for a lot of negative stuff, and probably rightfully so, but I guarantee you, even 13 years removed from Chicago, it is still one of the great cities in America, and it's worth a visit if you haven't been there. Rick can tell you, and if Reddy Letty's lurking, watching the show, I hope she is, and I hope you're watching Reddy. She could tell you too. And if you're watching Reddy, I love you. I love you, and I hope you are. But if not, I'm recording the show. I'll show it to you later, okay?
As am I. So, by the way, so far I've been asking in the chat here. I don't know if you've been watching the chat at all, but I've been kind of watching it on the second PC while also watching you. And I've been asking, what do people think of the show so far? I want to see whether or not they're going to boo us off the stage or,
Yeah.
not. And so far, everyone seems to be liking it. So I guess we're doing okay so far.
Either that, or they think this large, intimidating black man might hurt them if they don't like the show. And don't worry about that, okay? Don't worry about that. I'm a pussycat, guys and gals.
Also, for those of you, also, that's the other thing about the internet, right, is that I still find it amazing that, you're literally however many miles, thousands of miles from me, and we can do a show like this as if we're in the same room. It's incredible.
We're roughly about 2,600 miles apart, I think. And yet, you're right. We're able to do this.
Just like we were in the same room, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
This wouldn't have been possible like 20 years ago, even with the internet, because,
not even 10 years ago, it would have been more difficult to do it than the way it is now. I mean, Zoom has been
possible, but
Zoom has been liberating. I really has been, and that it's able to bring people together. This should have been Skype, but Microsoft screwed that up.
We're not even going to go there. Art can tell you all about that. Art's been like a long-time user. Anything Microsoft gets their hands on, they ruin. The only thing I will say that Microsoft's done a good job with overall, Windows and Xbox is the two things they've done pretty good without screwing it up.
Windows 10, some of those Windows 10 updates, man, it's like an adventure. God.
Yeah, every now and then they get a bad one. But overall, and of course it's something to do with the fact, Windows 10's been out, since 2015 now, so it's been a good solid 6-7 years, So most of the bugs are worked out or whatever.
But there have been some significant gotchas, even recently. At least I've encountered them. But for the most part, you're right. You're right. Windows, it's like Windows used to be kind of an adventure. Like every other version was great, and the other one was like, oh my God, what were they thinking? I remember I had a computer that I bought it. It was a refurbished compact Presario desktop with a 700 megahertz Athlon processor. And I thought, oh my God, my first non-Intel processor. This should be interesting. And at the time, AMD was making processors that were threatening Intel, but Intel, of course, was still dominant. So I loved it. Yeah, exactly. It's like come full circle again because AMD fell behind for a while and now they're kicking Intel's butt lately. But back then I bought this computer and it was a great little machine. And then within a year, or it wasn't quite a year, Windows Millennium Edition or Windows ME or Windows Me came out. And I kept hearing nothing but horror stories from people who had upgraded their machines from 98 to Windows Me, pulling their hair out, throwing their machines out the window, whatever. But see, I'm an upgradeaholic, so I was curious. I thought, I'm gonna try Windows Me out and see how it works for me. And I did, and I had no problems with it. When Windows Vista came along, people had all kinds of problems with Windows Vista. I bought a laptop when I came out here, my first laptop computer ever. It was a Dell Inspiron something or other. Had a Celeron processor in it. I mean, weak stuff. Don't basically do only the basic stuff. I actually did my first internet radio stuff from that little Dell desktop with the Celeron.
I did the same. I had the same thing. I have it. It's actually in the other room still. But I don't use it. Like it literally can't even handle YouTube like without buffering. It's
and this
got that bottom of the barrel spec.
Yeah, and that machine back then would not be able to handle anything that we're doing now. But the point was, Vista, I had no problem with it. I heard all these horror stories about Vista. No problem with Vista.
Well, and I got a little bit of a story or two about that. So from what I've heard from tech people about Windows Vista is the reason Windows Vista was so bad, granted, it was not... It wasn't as terrible of a software as people remembered as. It was more like it was advanced for its time. Because you got to remember, they took a huge leap from Windows XP, which was very simplistic in nature, to a more graphic-intensive operating system with Vista. And Vista, quite frankly, came out in a time where hardware improvements were not that great. Like there wasn't. It had been hardware has been stagnant for years and years and years and years at that point. Vista came along, it ran, but it didn't run well because the hardware was designed for XP. Sure. And here you have a more demanding operating system demanding more and more of it, and it just couldn't handle it. And that's why people remember Vista so bad, is because it crashed, it was buggy, but it was more to do with the hardware at the time than the software. Now, granted, Vista did have its quirks actually with the software, but it was more hardware thing. And of course, the reason why people love Windows 7 so much, because I do believe, as bad as Windows Vista was, if Vista didn't come along, 7 would not have been as good as it was. You know what I mean? Like, it was almost like Vista and 7 are twins, and the first one came first, and the second one, everyone loved them. But if Vista wasn't there first, Microsoft would not have improved Vista to make 7. And also, Vista kind of forced the hand of the hardware manufacturers to make better software. So by the time 7 came along, the hardware had caught up.
You do realize that Vista was supposed to be 7. And Microsoft actually scaled back on what their original vision for Vista was in order to release Vista. But it was supposed to be 7. I talked to someone who was, I believe they were either a system analyst or something like that, and they said to me that originally, and I remember reading this in the industry press as well. There were a lot of features that were pulled back from Vista in order to get Vista released on time, and a lot of those features were in 7. And this analyst told me that Windows 7 should have been a service pack upgrade to Vista. That's how closely related they were. I mean, you said they were practically twins. They actually were. Yeah. So, I
did read that somewhere too, where they were going to release the Windows 7 initially as a big service pack, patch.
Yeah, exactly.
Vista.
Exactly.
But then Microsoft decided they may as well just rebrand it as a new operating system because the Vista name was just so tarnished by that time. It was beyond recovery. You know what I mean? So they're like, and it turned out to be a good decision because when we think back to Windows Vista, everyone's like, Vista. When everyone thinks about Windows 7, they're like, oh, I love Windows 7. I wish when Microsoft was still supporting it. And by the way, Aaron did say Windows 7 was what Vista should have been.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And yes, I shed a tear when 7 went away. But I wasn't put off by Windows 8 as much as the whole world was. I guess I'm just a contrarian as far as that goes. I had no problem with Windows 8, especially when a couple of third-party software makers came out with apps to bring back the start button. That was cool because the biggest thing.
Of course, they eventually did a service pack patch to bring that back.
Well, yes and no.
Windows 8.1.
Windows 8.1. Well, it really wasn't the full start button though. That was that existed since Windows 95.
Yeah, it's different.
Whereas in 10 has all that now.
Yeah.
But the 8.1 update was like. I wanted to go back to 8 and just use that third-party utility that I had because it was a more complete start button than what Microsoft pawned off on us in 8.1.
I feel like that was the biggest mistake they made with Windows 8 because you see the reason they did Windows 8 the way they did was because they were trying to cater to the touchscreen trend of the time. Because, touchscreens were becoming all the rage, and tablets were, popular back then. So that was their goal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they kind of turned off the laptop and the desktop users who don't have touchscreens. And I think, so when they came out with Windows 10, because if you think about it, the way I think about it, Windows 10 is basically they took the best of Windows 7, the best of Windows 8, and put them together, right? So they took what people hated about Windows 8, which was the start menu, got rid of it. They brought back the old style start menu, but they still kept the tiles. And I don't know if you know, but Windows 10 does still have tablet mode. So if you turn that on, it'll be literally basically Windows 8 again.
I know. Exactly. Yeah, it's still there. Yeah. I was just going to say that the other thing that Windows 8 did wrong is that it went touchscreen first. So you had to get used to, starting up with the touch interface and then selecting the desktop to go to the desktop. Windows 8.1 allowed you to boot directly to the desktop, which was its best feature, because then you didn't have to worry about that, the touch interface at all. You just went right to the desktop. Eventually, there were third parties that made that available for Windows 8. But when Microsoft incorporated that into Windows 8.1, it might have been too little too late, because I think most people were just kind of turned off by the whole 8 experience. I used both, and I loved both, because Windows 8 as well as 8.1 were noticeably faster and more efficient than 7. As great as 7 was, Windows 8 and 8.1 were faster. But because of, they're making the mistake of putting the touch interface front and center, they just turned off too many people, again, like they did with Vista.
And I do think they fixed that mistake with Windows 10. I really think they kind of hit the nail on the head with Windows 10 with it, because they realized their mistake. They're like, we're not going to get rid of it, because there are still people who use touchscreens. Although that was the other thing, is touchscreen computers ended up being almost like a fad, right? Like they took off for a couple years, and then they just kind of died out, because people, there are users who can find use with touchscreens, like graphic designers or people who are artists and stuff like that. They're going to benefit from a touchscreen computer. But the average user doesn't really get much value out of a touchscreen. So it really didn't take off in the common market. So, and of course, at that point, Windows 8 was basically doomed, because it did not work well on non-touchscreen devices, if we're being completely honest. It was glitchy.
I see. My experience was different. It wasn't glitchy at all once you got to the desktop. Once you got to the desktop,
it was like working with 7. It was very glitchy, though.
Well, see, for me, you go right to the desktop from there. That's what and 8.1 made that easier, because you could boot directly to the desktop. But what I would do on a Windows 8 machine is I'd start it up and look for the desktop icon, and I'm in the desktop, and that's where I stayed for the rest of my session. And it was like working with a faster version of 7, and that's what people didn't get, because they got fed up with the window dressing. They didn't realize, well, if you open the window, there's some cool stuff back there.
Yeah, I gotcha. And there has been some talk Windows 10 could be the last Windows operating system, because when Microsoft has kind of shifted gears, a little bit. They went from but previously the strategy was it was basically a what's the word I'm looking for? A product. Windows was a product. They do a big release every 3-4 years, and they release a new one, and then they'd make money off of it, and so on and so forth. Windows 10, they're doing it differently. This time, they're trying to do Windows 10 as just kind of like a platform for features and programs that they want to do. So instead of doing a new release, they just do what they've been doing, which is every 6 months they add little features here and there with feature updates to Windows 10. And sometimes those features are good, sometimes they're but that is what it is with Windows. But
and sometimes
they're working on Windows 11, it hasn't leaked yet. And usually everything leaks. So that tells me they're probably not working on one.
More than likely they're not, because I think that Windows 10, I heard that as well. This may be the last version of Windows, and they're just going to just keep improving it, refining it. And it's more Windows as a service rather than Windows as a product.
It's probably cheaper to do it that way, too, I would imagine. You can have one team just working on the new releases to Windows 10 rather than having one team that's focusing on the updates for the current operating system and having a whole different team which has to work on, the new one.
Yeah. One of the things I did hear about it is that they were considering offering very distinct flavors of Windows 10 for a specific, clientele, which they sort of do anyway. And they had gotten away from it for a while where it was down to just like 3 versions. Now we might be going in the other direction where there are, multiple versions for, home users and enterprise users, small business users, Martians and other aliens. I mean, so we could be going back in that other direction.
I was going to say also Windows 10 is probably, I would say, the most versatile of all the Windows ones I've seen because there are so many features in Windows 10. I don't think any one user would ever use all the features in it. Oh, yeah. But there are, and there are some features where, like, as an average person, because I'm like I consider myself the average computer user basically. Yeah. Like, what would I do with this feature, right? But then, because I work at Staples, right? That's like my day job basically. Sure. And so we deal with a lot of business customers, and so a lot of them will tell me they find a use for this specific feature that I don't. So I guess it's kind of like they try to cater as much to everybody at once without taking away the user experience for everybody,
Which is, if you think about it, that's an incentive for them to try to maybe consider going in the direction of creating more specialized versions of Windows so that you're not getting features that you don't need, which kind of,
takes up space.
Exactly. I'm not sure I like that, honestly, because I like to tinker. I like to explore. I like to try stuff out. And it's kind of nice to have those things. If you have some slow moments like, I wonder if I can do what I'm thinking I might want to try to do if I use this, and then you find it works. It's like, oh, cool. I never thought I'd need that, but then you find a need for it. I like having all that stuff at hand, whether I need it or not. It's like, it's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it. So if they go in that direction, I personally would be a little disappointed.
But in the same token, of course, as well as Windows 10 is probably the biggest storage space-wise operating system they've ever made. It's also the most demanding on the hardware because it's so much going on at one time. Windows 10 legit could not have existed in the 90s because computers had like 2 gigabytes of storage back then. Yeah. Of course, these days Google Chrome uses up 1 gigabit of storage. So, also just wanted to kind of and maybe we'll get into this because I feel like we're probably coming up on where we should take a break for a bit.
Yeah.
But I just want to say maybe we can get into this next. But Art was saying his actually, he said my fist. It was a typo. But I'm going to say my first experience with MS Windows was 3.1. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, no. See, I remember 3.1. You probably weren't around when 3.1.
No, you see, when first time I used a computer was Windows XP, and I was like 8 or 9, and my grandfather showed me how to turn it on and turn it off, and I knew more than him in 6 months with just playing around.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Even still, all the old people come into Staples and we're like, how do you guys know all this stuff? And I'm like, me? They didn't give us any classes. This is just, I just grew up around it. So I've had the opportunity to play around with it and use it on a daily basis. So.
Yeah, see, and that's what I kind of figured was going to happen eventually because, I didn't grow up with this stuff like the older folks. I'm older folks, okay? Eisenhower was president when I was born, okay? Nothing I can do about that. That's the way it was. But I had this interest in things geeky, nerdy, electronic and stuff. I mean, I was fascinated by it. For me, the big thing was NASA, the space program. I mean, that was the thing that young nerdy geeks focused on. I was in this mail order club where I would get like every couple of months, I would get a new NASA space capsule. Like first it was Mercury, then it was the Gemini, then the Apollo, and I would, they're like little models that you put together. And that was my thing. And you get the magazines and stuff and read about the latest news in the space program. I mean, I was like totally into that stuff. So when computers came along and, I was reading Popular Mechanics and Popular Science magazine. And so I was reading about the developments in computers and how the first, they called them microcomputers back then, which eventually evolved into the PCs that we have today. And I was reading about, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak doing their thing out in Central California, and the Apple One, and thinking, oh man, I'd love to get my hands on something like that. Of course, I couldn't afford it, obviously, but it was still something I was interested in and fascinated by. So I followed this stuff from way back when, and I thought that there's going to be a time when kids are just it's going to be second nature to them because that's all they're going to know. And you're part of that. Yeah, you're part of that generation. Exactly. So either
and the funny thing is, while I'm good with computers, the next generation after me, you got to realize they came out. The kids these days that are like 9, 10 years old, they grew up in the smartphone era. Okay? There were still flip phones when I was a kid. Sure. I still took my little CD Walkman on the bus and would listen to my CDs. So the kids these days, they're not even going to know what a CD is. Probably. Probably just going to be because they listen on their iPhone, their iPad, whatever smartphone there is. So we've gone from the computer generation, which is me, to the smartphone generation, and I'm sure they still know their way around a computer, right? But it's going to be more focus is going to be on portability. So I think that's going to continue to drive the mobile market.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, because here's the thing that kind of depressed me when I bought my new computer is that, next to my new computer is my old computer, which is an 8-year-old Dell Optiplex. It's, their business line. And it's got this big old, hold on. I'm going to show you something here. I'll be right back. Okay, I don't know how well this is going to show up on screen because I think that the images have been a little choppy at times, at least on my screen. But I'm going to hold this up. Let me make sure.
I switched it to the full screen view, so we'll see just you.
Okay, you see this? This is, I took this out of the other computer because this is a CD or DVD drive.
Those are rare in the new computers today.
Yeah, you know exactly where I'm going with this. My new computer has one, but it's the same type of drive that used to be put in laptops. So it's not this big, chunky box. It's this flimsy little tray that comes popping out that I'm afraid is going to break. It does the same thing, but not nearly as fast. Now, I took this out of the older computer that I have, the refurbished computer, to replace it with a Blu-ray drive that I bought a few years ago. And so that's in the computer now. I could have kept them both in, but I don't think the power supply would have been powerful enough in that machine to handle them both. So I just swapped out. But this thing works perfectly well. And unfortunately, I was thinking, well, I'll just put it in the new machine. No, can't do that. Won't fit.
You should see the new laptops now. They're so slim now. They've literally the CD built-in disk drive is almost dead. It's like a dinosaur now. There's I think we have one laptop that has it, and we haven't had it in stock because of the processor shortage or whatever. So it's going to come to a time where only the few desktops, and there's not many desktops out there that are still in stores. I'm sure they're online.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I got mine.
It's going to be a thing for desktops, and then if you want a disk drive, you're going to have to get a little USB one.
Yep.
But that being said, what do you say we take a break, and then we'll pick this back up for the second half because we're basically getting now into the second half of the first hour of the show.
Sounds good,
and
sure.
When we come back, maybe you could tell us about your first computer.
Okay. You're going to love that one.
We'll kick the second half off with that. So, everyone, we will be right back. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in so far, by the way. We're going to have, during the break here, not the whole song because it's Juan over here picked an 8-minute and 28 song. It was supposed to be
How dare he!
It ended up being, I ended up playing the shorter one. But we're going to play Sun Goddess by Ramsey Lewis while we're on the break. And then when we're ready to pick this back up, I'll just kill the song.
Sure.
So definitely won't be the whole song. And then if we have another break, probably we'll play the rest of it. But we might not because we made it through the whole first hour without a break.
Yeah. The time just flew by, so...
So anyway, on that note, everyone, here's the song, and we'll be right back in just a few. Don't go anywhere.
We'll be back.